Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you for a little bit about Yakyuu, Powerful Pro Yakyuu 2022, although I think they've replaced the first word with eBASEBALL at this point in time. And I gotta tell you, man, I kind of feel like I wasted my money this time. Because, well, let's just get this out of the way right now, because you might have noticed that this video is nowhere near as long as my other ones on this series, because due to reasons of time and motivation, and just how similar this game is to eBASEBALL 2020, I found myself just not being in a position to really do the old 2-hour video that I've done for almost every other game in the series so far. So with that said though, there's only like one new mode in this game. It's entirely online and they haven't even unveiled all of it yet as of this recording, and the game's been out for like over a month at the point I'm doing this recording, so there's no bloody point in talking about it, or at least showing it. I'll be talking about it, don't you worry, but outside of that, it's basically exactly the same selection of modes and content that 2020 has, minus the Tokyo 2020 Olympics mode, which was basically just a tournament mode with some fancy players in it. And even then, you can still play tournaments in this version of the game, as far as I'm aware. So it doesn't really matter in the slightest. So as a result, I'm just going to link you to my video on eBASEBALL 2020, both in the description, and if I can figure it out before this video needs to go live, in the top right corner, in that little info bubble thing that shows up sometimes. If you want more detailed explanations about everything that happens in eBASEBALL 2022, just go watch my video on 2020. It'll give you the lowdown on pretty much everything. Now, that's not to say that there's absolutely nothing new in 2022. It's just that a lot of it feels very iterative, and if I'm being honest, a couple of it feels like a couple of steps back. For the particular modes in general, the live scenario scoring system got changed, and there's a couple of different things about the way that works, but it doesn't really feel like it's taken a step forward because it's still the same content at the end of the day. The pennant mode can go forever now, apparently. They've taken off the yearly limiter on it, so you can play as far into the future as you want to, which is kind of a nice touch, although I wonder how that works with, like, getting new players in after some have retired and whatnot. But again, I don't play pennant, so I've got no idea what the actual changes would be there. There's the My Life mode, which has gotten a couple of new things I can't remember off the top of my head. There's Crown 9, which has a bunch of younger players from all throughout baseball that's been sprinkled in to the timeline there, and they've added a new secondary tournament that you can go to that'll help improve your players. That's nice, give the game a little bit more variety and longevity, I can't argue with that. Success mode has got 3 brand new stories and a couple other things on the side like that, but outside of that, it really just does feel like the same stuff, the same content, the same gameplay. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the eBASEBALL gameplay has always been like top-notch. They have changed a couple of things. The main thing that's kind of been grinding my gears, and I could not tell you why, is that the game's fielding is a lot harder than it used to be. You know that automated switching where it's like, let's just say you're on defense, the guy hits the ball and it heads out into the outfield. I always get it wrong when it comes to thinking what guy is going to end up being the one that's in control and starts going for the ball. I always get like someone who's further out. I always head in the wrong direction, and therefore my defensive plays almost always fail. I swear that's a change from 2020, and it's not me just being garbage. You know, I swear to God, that's a thing. But yeah, they've also taken away the meter that you get for hammering away on the L and R buttons, which is odd. I also think they've made it a tiny bit slower than it used to be, as in slower to build up. I mean, like, they made it even slower than it was in 2018 and 2020, and then they made it even slower here. So that's odd. I mean, it's okay if you're going for some kind of balance, but I'm not entirely sure whether or not that's the case. There's also changes to my favorite mode here, which is Power Festival. The main one, there's two actually big ones. The main one being that you actually split into one of two different tournaments at the beginning of the game, and it determines what teams you end up facing and what, what's the word I'm looking for? What commentator you get, because there's a new female commentator to this version of the game, who's apparently the first female commentator in the entirety of the series, which is not surprising and surprising simultaneously. I don't hate her, not by any stretch of the imagination, she's perfectly fine. I don't know, like, I kind of like the male guy better, but that might just be because I've been playing this series for something like 6 years at this point, and I've gotten used to him saying ridiculous English phrases like, "Oh my god!" or something along those lines. But to be fair, the female commentator actually has that line as well. You just don't hear it as often. But yes, outside of that though, I have been playing this game for a bit. I've been playing it for something like 10 to 15 hours at this point, and I haven't noticed much else different in terms of the gameplay. I really wish that I could revert the fielders. Maybe it's just an option that I need to go find somewhere, because we all know what the options menu is in these games are like. Just impenetrable walls of text that you need to Google Translate and hope that you get some idea of what the option is meant to do. But still, everything is still here. You can still make cheering songs, you can make custom pictures, you can make custom teams and players and throw them together in all the modes in all the different ways that you want. Although, I will bring this up, because I was, well, I'm not going to call myself confused, but I did notice that, again, there wasn't really much going on in the way of just overall changes to the base gameplay. So I ended up going and looking up reviews on Amazon Japan, of all things, and outside of the fact that a lot of it was unintelligible, because even Google Translate can't help you out with massive walls of Japanese text that are very context dependent on the sport of baseball, it does mean that I was able to glean some stuff, and apparently there are some new problems they've introduced in this version for a lot of the different game modes, and I can't really comment as to exactly what they are, just because of the fact that, again, they're modes that I don't play. But they have said things like playing in pennant mode is overall worse than it was in 2020, and there are some things about the online functionality that have gone awry, and a couple of other things on top of that. Again, I can't speak from experience on that one, I'm just speaking from what I read on the Amazon Japan things. Oh yeah, one other thing I noticed that's actually changed, they've added like little sprites to the pause menu, so it's a little bit easier to tell what you're doing when you need to pause in the middle of a at-bat. However, of course there is a big elephant in the room that we need to talk about, right? Oh, I almost forgot to mention about Power Festival. Since you've got like one entire side of players that that you just don't end up facing throughout the game because they're all on the other side of the tournament ladder, you find yourself, what's the word I'm looking for? Having a lot of players you can't access, and they give you the scout mechanic, which is, if you manage to keep matches exciting, you'll get more points towards it, and you'll be able to use those points in order to recruit dudes from the other side of the ladder, which is kind of a nice touch, but I found it to be kind of hard to actually determine what gives you points for that. So it was just kind of like, okay, I guess I'll just take this player and just be done with it. So yeah, not the best additions for Power Festival. It's still fine, but, you know, you always end up wishing for more, right? But anyway, back to what I was saying before. There is a new mode in this game. It's the only new mode overall in Power Pros 2022. And I'll be honest with you, it's a great heaping pile of dog shite. That, I can just end the video here, but I'm not going to. Here's the thing about this new mode. It's called Power Park, right? And Power Park is actually 3 separate modes, and these 3 separate modes are all online only. So when you end up getting like Power Pros 2022 for cheap, and then you try and play the new mode that they had in it, it just ends up not working, which is a absolute shame. But the new modes are thus. They are all heavily dependent on custom players. So you have to spend a lot of time either building up a lot of custom players or spending a lot more time going and getting, what's the word I'm looking for? Going and getting players from the online stuff in order to actually use them in this mode. And so you get all these players and you can use them in 3 different modes, one of which isn't actually available yet at the time of this recording. So, yeah, that's a thing. Can't really tell you about the third one, but the first one and the second one should give you a real idea of what's going on here. The first one is called Sushi Survival. Oh yeah, before I say this, the idea is that you actually have to take your custom teams and pre-assign them before you actually tackle any of these modes. So you might have 30 good players sitting around, you might have 10 from the last time you tried to play this mode, but you actually need to go and like assign 20 of them. And then in Sushi Survival, you get to start with like 3 of your players, then 12 like really generic ones, and you just got to win an AI-controlled match where you can pop in from time to time to try and sway the game, whether it be via pitching or via batting. And it's not great. I just don't find it to be that enjoyable. You've just got to play like endless game after game after game in order to really get a score going. There doesn't really feel like there's that much in the way of rewards for it. And I fell off this mode real quick. It just doesn't do anything for me. And again, you need as many custom players like registered as you can get. I'd played like 6 or 7 runs of Power Festival at this point, right? So I had a few players, but I didn't realize just how bad it was. Like, you need a full set of 15 to really stand a chance at these modes, right? So I ended up just getting crippled and not being able to get past round 3 after a couple of tries. And I was like, yeah, this sounds about right. I'll just give this one up for now. Pain in the ass. Then, after about, like, I can't remember if it was a few weeks or a month. I don't remember the exact time frame. But then they opened up the other one. Powerful Royale. If that makes you think that it's a Battle Royale mode, you'd be correct. But not in the way that you might think. So you make a team entirely of custom players, so of course you'll need like a full 15 to really get anywhere. And they'll play against the other players that you go up against via the AI. So the AI will take control of both teams. If you haven't been putting much in the way of like your AI routines when you've been making your custom players, you're pretty much screwed. Like, just straight up screwed. And so you find yourself going up against teams that you have absolutely no way of competing against, and it becomes an absolute blowout because the AI is just way better than your team is at the game, and you'll just get floored. There is a system that has like these flame balls that you get. Every player gets 2 of them, and by every player I mean both players. You both get 2 of them, and you can press triangle to exhaust them. And they're like a little bit of a motivational boost for the team. But, of course, unless you're not getting your ass kicked, there's basically no point in using them because you're going to get your ass kicked either way. It's just depressing. Because I spent all this effort making this custom team, and it's like, oh, I didn't spend any money on AI routines to actually make these guys do what they're good at, and my team is going to turn out shit as a result of it. Now, to be absolutely fair to the game, you do have the opportunity to, like, go through, like, the Saku success mode and make a bunch of custom players that way and use them to play the entirety of, of these modes. But I don't think you get points to put into AI-generated things, although it's been so long since I've actually done that mode that I cannot remember to save my life. But yeah, those are the 2 online modes that you get. They've hinted at what the third one is, and I believe Gamatsu did a little bit of a translation of it a while back. But it's basically something along the lines of, your players get turned into pencils and then they roll, and that determines the outcome of the game somehow. Because they roll the pencils like dice. It was something ridiculous like that. I don't even remember what it was, but I don't even know what that's meant to do, what that's meant to accomplish. I got nothing. And so, as a result, I feel like the modes that they introduced are just, They're not something I'm even remotely interested in, because it's not a It's not single player content. It's not even content that I can play single player or have it be enhanced by multiplayer. It's just purely multiplayer, a lot of luck, a lot of having to build a lot of teams elsewhere. And there's something like even in the Powerful Royale mode, right? There are objectives that you can do. They'll give you extra flame balls so that you can start powering up your team earlier on by just getting specific players, like under specific ratings or being very good at specific things. But if you don't do that, you don't get those. So you just end up in a position where this game doesn't match up to the other ones because it doesn't. Well, I mean, it does some things, some new things, but when you can probably get the 2020 version of this game for a fair bit cheaper and get, like, the same experience, I feel better recommending that one over this one. Because this one is just so similar in every way. Has a new mode that's just online modes that are just not enjoyable. That I'm just like, yeah, just get the last one if you can. Probably better for it. I mean, you won't get live scenario mode, which is actually a fair bit of fun if you're looking for just something to do 5 minutes instead of 30, like, say, Power Festival. But, yeah, honestly, I feel like I wasted my money. I would have happily gone and gotten, what's it called? I would have happily just stuck with 2020. But, yeah, I've got 2022 now, and I mean, I might as well play that for my Power Festival fix, but yeah, I just gotta tell you, man, not the biggest fan of this one in general. If it's the only one you can find, you're looking for a decent in for this series, I would still recommend it. But if you've got 2020, stick with 2020. That's my recommendation at the end of the day. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll let you watch the rest of this Power Festival run. I'll see you all next time.
勝ち越しのチャンス、間違いなくハイライトになるでしょう。ここでバッターボックス打ちました。ヒット、レフト前ヒットになった。パワーフェスチャレンジャーズ、ここで勝ち越しました。土田選手タイムリーツーベース、今日初めて安打を放ちました。今の勝ち越しのシーン、リプレイでご覧ください。同点のピンチです。そしてバッターは亀山選手、大貫選手、粘って味方の援護に期待したいです。初球から送ってきました。ボールを掴んだ。アウト。なおもピンチが続きます。そしてバッターボックスは半田選手、大貫選手、この場面でどういったピッチングを見せてくれるか。際どい打球。掴みました。輝選手タッチアップ。三塁ランナーホームイン。パワーフェスチャレンジャーズ。ここでピッチ。さあ思わぬところで力を発揮する田中選手です。投げた。パワーカーブ見送ってボール、大きく外れてボールになりました。投げました。パワーカーブ見送ってボール。さあ3球目、真ん中決まってストライク。第4球はパワーカーブはストライク。いい当たりが飛んでいる。右中間破った。ボールが転がっている。田中選手一気に二塁へ。田中選手勝ち越しのチャンスを迎えます。では改めてリプレイ。さあ猿山選手、バットに当たればというところ。ここで決めれば勝利はぐっと近づきます。鋭い打球が飛ぶ。レフト前ヒット。三塁タッチはセーフ。際どいタイミング。チャレンジャーズ。さあ1球目、空振り。迷ったようなスイング。第2球を投げました。またしても空振り。追い込まれました。さあ外してくるのでしょうか。勝ち越しのチャンス。打ち上げた。これは内野フライ。力みすぎたのでしょうか。取りました。これでワンアウト。さあそしてバッターボックスは今日ツーベースを打っている土田選手。ヒットになるか。これはヒットになりそう。掴みました。これでツーアウト。さあ好打者の矢部明夫選手が登場です。渾身のストレートはボール。カウントワンボール。打 打ち上げた。これは打ち上げてしまいました。これで3つ目のアウト。チェンジです。さあ8。そして迎えるバッターは小俣選手。打ちました。初球打ち、センター前ヒット。大貫選手ヒットを許します。さあ積極的に長打を狙っていく海野選手が打席に立ちます。大貫選手、嫌な打った。ボールはライナーで右中間へ抜いた。ボールが点々と転がっている。中継を挟みます。海野選手ピンチを迎えます。ではここでバッターは結城選手、大貫選手。ここで得点を与えると勝利が遠のいて、打った。一二塁間抜けた。中継を挟みます。パワーフェスチャレンジャーズ、ついに勝ち越しを許してしまいました。リプレイで勝ち、円谷選手内野安打もあります。さあチャレンジャーズが反撃ののろしを上げます。シンカー決まってストライク。第2球はまた空振り。円谷選手早くも追い込まれています。膝元空振り三振。円谷選手3球で終わってしまいました。金倉選手ホームランを打って勢いに乗れるでしょうか。第2球投げました。シンカーはボール。さあ3球目、インサイドへ体近くへの投球。第4球を投げた。打ちました。打球はセンターへヒット。金倉選手安打を放ちます。予期せぬところで結果を残す波風選手が登場です。初球を打ちました。ヒットになります。ボールはセカンドへ。二塁はセーフ。では改めてここでバッターボックスには堀口選手、全力で立ち向かう姿を見せてほしいです。第2球投げた。抜いたボールストライク。堀口選手追い込まれました。同点のチャンス。さあ次は何で来るのでしょうか。あっとどうだ。面白い打球になりました。ここはがっちりボールをキャッチしています。これで2アウト。さあ思わぬところで力を発揮する田中選手です。まだ諦めてはいません。なおも攻撃は続きます。投球これから2球目、ストライク低め。まだまだこんなところでは終われません。打った。これはいったか。ワンバウンドヒット。ボールが転がっている。中継へまずは同点。もう一人帰るか。タッチはアウト。これで3アウト。リプレイで9回までここは踏ん張りどころ。バッターは諸星選手。この場面乗り切ることができるでしょうか。インハイへの危険な投球。投げました。ストライクアウトローへ。際どい打球。切れていきます。ファール。あっといい当たり。レフト前クリーンヒット。ボールが転がっている。輝選手ホームも狙う。河川敷ミラクルズ6対4。さあ先ほどさあ猿山選手バットに当たればというところ。投げた。あっとどうだ。ライト前のヒットになります。猿山選手いいバッティングを見せます。第1球投げた。シンカーはストライク。ピッチャーの出方を伺います。チェンジアップはストライク。チェンジアップでタイミングをずらします。空振り三振。チャンスを逃してしまいました。ワンアウト満塁です。そしてバッターは土田選手。あっとどうだ。面白い場所に飛んでいます。ヒット。センター前ヒットになった。パワーフェスチャレンジャーズ1点返しました。それでは先ほどのとこワンアウト満塁です。矢部昭夫選手、ここで結果を出せるでしょうか。バットを出しません。ボール。第3球をシンカー空振り。第4球投げました。パワーカーブ空振り。タイミングが合いません。空振り三振。矢部選手どうしてしまった。2アウト満塁です。円谷選手内野安打もあります。パワーカーブ見送ってボール。カウント1ボール。パワーカーブはストライク。 投球3球目、インサイドへ体近くへの投球。第4球はチェンジアップ見送ってボール。これは完全にボールです。あっと、どうだ、面白い打球になりました。取りました。河川敷ミラクルズ、最後をきっちり打ち取ってゲームセット。パワーフェスチャレンジャーズ、あと一歩及びませんでした。頑張ってくれましたが1回戦のようにはいきませんでした。以上、第2回戦の模様をインフィネットフィールドよりリアルタイム配信でお送りしました。この辺りで失礼します。